Neglectful love. I sit at my kitchen table, the same one where we used to share hurried breakfasts and late-night confessions, now staring at the empty chair across from me. The silence is deafening, not because the room is quiet, but because it lacks the familiar cadence of his voice, his laughter, even his indifference. 5 years of weaving a life together, thread by fragile thread, only for him to pull the final stitch and let the entire tapestry unravel. He is gone, and I am left bewildered, grappling with a grief that feels both profound and perverse, mourning a man who, by all accounts, did not deserve my tears. Yet here I am, drowning in them, while he, seemingly unburdened, has already woven a new thread with someone else, as if our shared history was but a fleeting sketch, easily erased. The confusion is a fog that clings to me, disorienting and dense. How does one mourn the loss of something that was, in truth, a source of pain? He was not cruel in the cinematic sense, no grand betrayals or dramatic confrontations, but his neglect was a slow poison, seeping into the crevices of our relationship until it eroded the foundation. He forgot birthdays, dismissed my ambitions with a wave of his hand, and let days pass without so much as a glance in my direction. I was a ghost in my own love story, haunting the edges of his life, begging for scraps of affection, and yet, the moment he walked out the door, I felt as though the ground beneath me had given way. Why do I grieve for a man who treated me as an afterthought? Why does my heart ache for someone who has already found solace in another's arms? The paradox of my mourning lies in the dissonance between what was and what I wanted it to be. For 5 years, I clung to the potential of us. I saw the man he could have been, the one who, in rare moments, would look at me with a tenderness that made my chest tighten, or who would laugh with me until we were breathless. Those moments were fleeting, like stars obscured by clouds, but they were enough to keep me tethered to hope. I built castles in the air, furnished them with dreams of a future where he would finally see me, truly see me, and love me as fiercely as I loved him. But those castles were illusions, and now that he is gone, I am left to wander their ruins, grieving not just the man, but the fantasy I constructed around him. The news of his new relationship came like a blade, swift and sharp. A mutual friend, perhaps unaware of the weight of her words, mentioned it casually, as if it were inconsequential. "Oh, didn't you hear? He's with someone new already." Already. The word echoed in my mind, a cruel reminder of how seamlessly he had moved on. Weeks after our breakup, he had found someone else, someone to fill the space I had occupied for half a decade. I imagined him laughing with her, sharing the same stories he once told me, his hand resting on hers in a way it rarely did with mine. The image burned, not because I begrudged him happiness, but because it exposed the asymmetry of our loss. I was still sifting through the wreckage of our relationship, while he had already built a new home. This disparity gnaws at me, fueling my confusion. How could he move on so effortlessly? Did our 5 years mean so little that he could replace me without pause? I replay our final conversation, searching for clues, but it was unremarkable, almost clinical. He said he needed space, that he wasn't sure who he was anymore. I nodded, numb, believing it was a temporary fracture, a moment of doubt we could mend. But there was no mending. He packed his belongings, left his key on the counter, and walked out, leaving me to grapple with a void that felt both sudden and inevitable. Now, I wonder if he was already planning his escape, if his heart had already turned to someone new while I was still clinging to the ghost of us. The loss is not just of him, but of the version of myself I became in his presence. I was the optimist, the forgiver, the one who believed love could endure anything. I bent myself to fit his silences, his absences, his indifference, convincing myself that my patience would eventually be rewarded. I diminished my own light to make room for his shadows, and now that he is gone, I am left to confront the parts of myself I sacrificed. Who am I without the weight of his neglect? Who am I without the hope that kept me tethered to him? The mirror reflects a stranger, and I mourn her too, the woman who loved so fiercely, so foolishly, that she lost sight of her own worth. The sensation of loss is visceral, a heaviness that settles in my chest and lingers through the mundane moments of my day. I wake up reaching for him, only to find the curled expanse of an empty bed. I cooked dinner for one, the act feeling both defiant and hollow. I walk past the park where we used to sit, and the benches seem to mock me with their emptiness. These small, everyday losses compound the larger one, each a reminder that he is no longer part of my world. And yet, the irony is that even when he was here, he was never truly present. His neglect was a kind of absence, a withholding of the intimacy I craved. So why does his physical absence hurt so much more? Part of the answer lies in the stories we tell ourselves about love. I grew up believing that love was a force of redemption, that it could heal wounds and bridge divides. I poured myself into our relationship with the fervour of a zealot, believing that my devotion could transform him into the partner I needed. But love, I have learned, is not a magic wand. It cannot change someone who does not wish to change, nor can it fill the gaps left by their indifference. My grief is not just for him, but for the collapse of that narrative, the realization that love alone was not enough to save us. The knowledge of his new relationship adds another layer to my mourning, a bitter edge that I cannot shake. I find myself scrolling through social media, searching for glimpses of his new life, even though each discovery is a fresh wound. I see a photo of him with her, their smiles radiant, and I am struck by how unfamiliar he looks, happy in a way he rarely was with me. I wonder if he was always capable of that happiness, if it was only with me that he withheld it. The thought is a dagger, twisting deeper with each question. Was I not enough? Did I ask for too much? Or was it simply that I was not her? These questions are futile, I know, but they haunt me nonetheless. They are the residue of a relationship that left me doubting my own value. His neglect was not a reflection of my worth, but it felt like it, and that feeling lingers like a bruise. I mourn the time I spent trying to prove myself to someone who was never truly looking. I mourn the energy I poured into a love that was never reciprocated in kind. And I mourn the illusion of security, the belief that 5 years meant we were unbreakable, when in truth we were always one step away from collapse. Yet even in the midst of this grief there is a strange clarity emerging. The fog of confusion is beginning to lift, revealing truths I could not see while I was still in his orbit. I am starting to recognize the ways in which I betrayed myself, compromising my needs to keep him close. I am beginning to understand that my mourning is not just for him, but for the parts of myself I lost in the process of loving him. This realization is both painful and liberating, a step toward reclaiming the woman I was before I let his neglect define me. The process of grieving is not linear. It is a labyrinth, full of twists and dead ends. Some days I am consumed by anger, at him for his indifference, at myself for my complicity. Other days I am overwhelmed by sadness, the weight of what could have been pressing against my ribs. Then there are moments of unexpected lightness when I catch a glimpse of future unencumbered by his shadow. These moments are fleeting, but they are enough to remind me that I am still here, still capable of building a life that is mine alone. I think often of the metaphor of a tapestry, not just because it catches the fragility of our relationship, but because it speaks to the possibility of repair. A A tapestry can be mended, its threads rewoven into something new, something stronger. I'm not there yet, but I am beginning to gather the threads of myself to stitch together a new pattern. It will take time, and there will be days when the weight of his absence feels unbearable. I'm learning to sit with the grief, to let it wash over me without drowning. I'm learning to mourn not just the man who left, but the illusions I held on to, and in doing so, I'm making space for something real, something that belongs to me. As I write this, I'm still bewildered, still confused by the depth of my loss for someone who treated me so poorly. But I am also beginning to see that this grief is not a betrayal of myself, but a testament to the depth of my capacity to love. I loved him, flaws and all, and that love was not wasted, even if it was not returned in kind. It is a part of my story, a chapter that has ended, but does not define the whole. He may have moved on seamlessly, but I am still here, piecing myself back together, thread by thread. In that slow, deliberate work, I am finding something I had lost sight of: myself.